I'm Harris Faulkner here today. Let's get right to our team. Emily Campagno and Kayleigh McEnany. Host of No Interruption on Fox Nation, Tommy Lahren is with us. And joining us today, former Assistant U.S. Attorney and Fox News contributor Andy McCarthy. Great to see everybody. Kayleigh, I'm actually going to start with you. I've been talking with Legal Eagles, and Andy, I'll get to you in just a second. But as I'm watching this, and I'm watching the political nature, I think back on something that former President Trump has been talking about for weeks. I interviewed him, just a short time ago. How many seats exactly do you think the Democrats are going to lose now in 2022?
Quite a few. Look, there's the polling aspect of this. We know just 34% of Americans support packing the Supreme Court. Also, there was a mistruth there in the Democrat press conference. They said there's a crisis of faith in the Supreme Court, when in fact, it's very easy to research. Go to Gallup, Trust in Institutions, and you can see that the Supreme Court actually gained majority approval in 2018 and maintained that in 2019 and 2020 and beyond. But let me be clear on this, because there's some fancy political footwork going on, to quote a former great conservative justice, and using that term. And that's what Pelosi is doing, and that's what Biden is doing. They're supporting this commission, which is really just a shell game for supporting court packing. This commission is 2-to-1 liberal. That's an analysis conducted by Josh Blackman, an attorney. It's 80% Harvard and Yale graduates or those affiliated with those institutions. No disrespect to my former alma mater, but that does not represent the majority of the country. So if you support the commission, you support court packing. This is a shell game, and it's a way to make this a politically and publicly palatable idea to the American people. It won't work, though.
So what about this idea, Andy? That commission's supposed to turn in its reports. I was just talking about this with Shannon Bream, 6 months from now. So again, this feels so political, right? I mean, you've got Mondaire Jones, who we heard from there at the lectern, put out a political ad. I mean, just call it that. I think we've got a little bit of it, talking about dark money and how the court's going to clean that up. I'll ask the team to play it if they've got it. Otherwise, I'll just read it. There's a relevant line in the video. Let's watch, and I'll come right back to you, Andy.
Our democracy is in crisis. The insurrection on January 6th made that clear. This crisis didn't arrive overnight or by accident. The Supreme Court helped bring us here. In fact, the court has been actively dismantling our democracy for years. It invited a torrent of dark money to flood our electoral process and set the stage for billionaires and special interests to control our politics. It gutted the protections of the Voting Rights Act and paved the way for a new era of racist voter suppression. It helped install Donald Trump in the White House, and he returned the favor by appointing more justices who are hostile to our democracy, who promised to lock us into minority rule for a generation. But we are not powerless to stop this. We, the people, can break the far-right anti-democratic grip on our democracy. We can expand the Supreme Court.
Did the U.S. Supreme Court just become political? Andy?
Well, look, this is all political theater. Watching that press conference, I was kind of wondering, how big idiots do they actually think we are? First of all, if you wanted to balance the Supreme Court and you're complaining that there was a 6-to-3 conservative majority, then why wouldn't you propose 3 seats? Why propose 4 seats? And it's obviously because they don't want Supreme Court balance. They want a situation where they can push the results that they want to push on the country. The second thing is, I don't think they really realistically think that they're actually going to get court packing done. There's too much opposition to it. But what you heard at the end of that press conference is what this is really all about, which is much like what FDR did in the 1930s. This is a gun to the Supreme Court's head in order to try to affect the way it either rules on cases, that is, the cases before it, what those outcomes are going to be, if there are conservative results, how narrow they're going to be rather than how big the presidential impact is, and also importantly, on what cases the court actually decides to accept going forward. So, you know, when we talk about what happened in the 1930s, we like to remember the idea that FDR tried to pack the court, but everybody thought that was such an outrageous idea that even the Democrats rejected it. The dirty little secret about that is the intimidation factor actually got the court to change its jurisprudence, and the result of that is that we've had about 3/4 of a century of progressive governance. So there's a method to what's going on here. It's theater, but it's theater with a purpose.
Well, I'm fascinated real quickly about the whole filibuster talk, too, because clearly Democrats, even with a bicameral majority, can't get done what they want to get. I mean, I guess, you know, the sticky wickets like Senator Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema and some others now that are standing up and saying, yeah, we don't agree with everything that the more progressive parts of the party are doing. And so I guess you don't need them if you get away, you know, from the filibuster, get rid of it, simple majority, and you don't need them if you have a Supreme Court that'll help you get defund the police or whatever it is. I mean, it's something else. I do want to press in further,
Harris,
though, on this Mondaire Jones video. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's a twofer for them because they destroy the Senate and the Supreme Court as institutions. If you get rid of the filibuster, the Senate is just the House, except it's not quite as democratic. And if you use getting rid of the filibuster to change the nature of the Supreme Court, it just becomes a super legislature. So the next time the Republicans are in control, they'll add another 4 seats. But then everybody will know it's not about the law, it's about what the political preference of the majority is, the way these cases are supposed to be decided.
Well, and what I would ask is then, does that water down really the supreme nature of the high court? Does it make it less supreme? Because if everybody can bring a friend, it's like Oprah, everybody gets a car. Okay, I want to get to this. Mondaire Jones, SCOTUS video that we just watched, there was one line in that was important. According to Jones, the Supreme Court helped bring us to this point. It invited a torrent of dark money to flood our electoral process and set the stage for billionaires and special interests to control our politics. Tommy, there's some irony in that, because at the Center for Responsive Politics, Open Secrets, there was a report in March that showed that the influx of dark money in our politics overwhelmingly benefited Democrats in the 2020 election. Here's some numbers. For Joe Biden, the amount of anonymous donor support, $174 million. For Donald Trump, $25 million. Tommy, your thoughts?
Yeah, what we saw goes beyond misleading. It's actually blatantly lying, and it can be best categorized as filth. Now, listen, this is Trump derangement syndrome 5.0. When they're not cheating, they are changing the rules. The American people were lied to, flat out lied to, in the entirety of the 2020 campaign. Joe Biden was asked about packing the court numerous times. He skirted the issue. The media, the fake news, they wouldn't press him on it, and now this is what we get. You know, we are paving the road, the yellow brick road to communism, and I know that that sounds dramatic, but let's pay attention here. You know, I know that, you know, some of my colleagues are saying that, oh, they won't get this done. It's not quite palatable yet. What have we learned in the last several years is that the left throws out extreme policy positions. They see how the American people respond, and then they inch closer and closer and closer to it. I'll give you an example. The Green New Deal. When AOC and the squad presented that, everyone thought that that was incredibly extreme. Now you've got the Biden administration that's implementing a lot of the facets of the Green New Deal. That was extreme. Now it's more palatable. This is the exact same thing. And I also find it incredibly ironic listening to that press conference of misfit losers lie to the American people. I thought it was incredibly ironic that the party that's been shutting down businesses, that's been quarantining healthy people in their homes for months, that's mandating what we wear strapped to our face, keeping our schools closed, and has led an assault on our First and Second Amendment for decades, is now telling us they are the party that are going to restore democracy and restore our rights. You have got to be kidding me. Hope the American people wake up and realize what's happening here, because this is pure evil.
So it's, you know, Emily, I want to kind of lean in deeper on this dark money, because from what Tommy is saying there, I mean, if there really is a more progressive agenda and you don't know where all of that 174 million came from, those donors into the Biden coffers, it does beg the question, who has influence over him right now? And you've seen some Republicans at high levels say, well, who's really running things right now? Where is this coming from? Should we be taking a closer look? I don't know that we can. They call it dark money for a reason.
Exactly. That's the legislation that would actually benefit the American people. And the answer, though, that we know thus far is that it's in the hands of a few. We know that there are a few sources that are controlling literally millions. That Mondaire Jones video, you guys, that's the campaign ad right there for Republicans in 2022. Yes. And I like to focus on just a couple takeaways of mine from this presser. So Chairman Nadler said that the court as currently posed has been politicized, and that is why it is, quote, broken. So then the answer to that, the antidote would be to politicize it further. He quoted the, quote, late, great Ruth Bader Ginsburg, but it was she who said that the surest way to have a court be partisan would be to ensure that seats are set from one that will enlarge the number of judges so we will have more people who will vote the way we want them to. He also argues in part that the need for the extra 4 seats is the fact that we have more circuits, that the low volume of certiorari, so the low volume of cases that are actually heard at that Supreme Court level. Well, doesn't that underscore the importance of state and federal courts below SCOTUS? And if so, why then did President Obama leave the most vacancies of any presidency? Why was President Trump then able to fill 245 vacancies if it was so crucial at those levels, since SCOTUS doesn't hear very many? He cited as well the racial diversity, or the other speakers cited the racial diversity, the lack thereof on the bench. Well, we know that that starts with access at a fundamental lower level. So why aren't we hearing that same passion from these Democrat and leftist leaders about closing the achievement gap, about focusing on closing that gap with American children, of communities of color at the public education level? To Tommy's point earlier about the lockdown and the effects on the public school system, Senator Markey called this phase 1. He called this educating the public. It is indoctrination. And final point, to Aaron Belkin, who says that future generations will look upon who we just listened to at that presser as saying that they honored the fact that this was a frightening situation, that recognizing the court as stolen and the resulting threat. No, I think that further generations will look back on this as a waste of time.
Or a red flag for what more was coming. Because if they wipe away the filibuster,
yes.
Katie bar the door, Kaylee. You know, something that you were saying, though, as you were speaking, Emily, made me think. You said, well, if they're really sincere about wanting to change things, why don't they look at all of, you know, what they could do for the American people? I think we know the answer to that. Because the goal isn't to bring out your best ideas. The goal is to grab more power. And you're hoping that, you know, with the power, nobody really questions you. Hence, where the term came from, Nancy Pelosi, let's pass it, and we can read what's in it later.
Yeah, Harris,
exactly.
if I could pick up on one thing there. You're exactly right. And Andy McCarthy, you made such a great point when you talked about this being about power and dominance. That's exactly it. Look, let's revisit Biden's words. It's gotten coverage, in fact, of course, that he called this a boneheaded idea previously. But if you go further into Biden's pontification on court packing, he goes on to say that FDR was corrupt on power when he tried to do this. And he said that this would lead to autocratic dominance. Think about that. That's such a strong term, a correct term from the former vice president, current president, that it would indeed lead to autocratic dominance, not just on the court, but with the elimination of the filibuster, to Andy's point, that would be total and complete control of Congress as well, wiping out 2 branches of government to accompany the third, which is, of course, run by a Democrat in the executive branch. And then piling on top of that, we've heard rumblings, and I believe it was Pete Buttigieg during the election, about the Electoral College being a problem. So if you control the election system, you control the legislature, and you control the Congress, you fundamentally reshaped America, destroyed our institutions, and ensured one-party rule, one-party governments, and one party who will continue to win on the campaign trail.
Well, I don't know if you guys picked it up. Actually, let's just play it, and we'll talk about it later. Mondaire Jones had a lot to say today because, you know, right before the news conference, we showed it as it was breaking in Faulkner Focus. He put out that, what I call, political ad on his Twitter. And then, of course, he was part of the whole, at the lectern, expand the court. Let's listen to a little bit more from Representative Jones.
If we want to save our democracy, we must act before it is too late by restoring balance to the Supreme Court. Our democracy faces its greatest test since Jim Crow. From the insurrection at the Capitol to the racist voter suppression being attempted all throughout the United States of America, The far right is at war with our democracy.
You know, Andy, all of this felt political, but especially when Mondaire Jones was talking about comparing the past to the present to the future. I mean, this was not about taking different issues in the nomenclature and let's work on it together as a people. This was, they know what's best for all of us and get on board.
Yeah, that's right. They feel ascendant, so they're comfortable imposing political solutions because they think they have the power now, which is why I think it's amusing for them to say it's the Supreme Court with their dark money decisions and their undermining of our democracy. Mm-hmm. It must have been a great undermining since the Democrats now control the House and the Senate and won the White House, you know. But wow. None of this is sincere. You know, I mean, this business about, again, they want 4 seats, not 3, because they want control. If you really thought that the current court was out of control right-wing court, why would one of your complaints be that the court doesn't hear and decide enough cases? You would think you would want them to decide less cases. But they're just saying whatever nonsense they think will resonate with people because it's a political argument, not a legal one.
Well, and it's a talk they're having with themselves. It's like 4 friends sat around drinking beer and they just kept saying the same thing over and over again until one went, we are so brilliant.
A lot of beer.
I mean, it's just a lot of talk. But now we want to know what happens next. Is there somebody in the room that will stand up and say, no, we are not going down that road? And last hour I talked with Congressman Ken Buck of Colorado. He and other Republicans are trying through amendment to protect the long-standing, 150 years of long-standing precedent that we have for our U.S. Supreme Court. They're hoping to be able to make that happen. But without them, who? Tommy, anybody among the Democrats that you see that will be brave among them and stand up and say, wait a minute, let's at least wait until the commission comes through that Biden put forth.
Yeah,
and I don't know, maybe that is smoke
you would certainly hope
but
so.
Wait for it.
You'd certainly hope so, but, you know, going back to what I said previously, and we've all kind of discussed here about the idea of making this more palatable, you know, the only reason the Democrats would stand up against this is because they would be worried about their seats come the midterms and come 2024. That would be the only reason that they would stand up against this. But the reason that I think that they're going to wait and see how this plays out in the media and in public opinion is because they know that as it's discussed more, as it becomes more mainstream, it will become more palatable because they use 3 key themes and buzzwords that really go to the heart of the sheep in this country. They brought up Donald Trump, which we know invokes feelings of Trump derangement syndrome, even though he's no longer in office. They talked about racism, and they talked about climate change. If they keep pushing those 3 things and they keep saying this is the way that we're going to advance all those 3 notions, we're going to get rid of what evil Donald Trump did, we're going to get rid of racism because the right is racist and the court is racist, and we're going to make sure that we fight this climate change war, this warriorship for climate change. If they keep messaging that to the sheep of this country, especially the younger individuals in this country, they will make that idea more palatable so that these Democrats might not have to worry about losing their seat in 22 or 24 because the public has now come around to the idea. That's why all of this is dangerous. That's why it cannot be taken as just political theater or a joke, because this is all part of their incremental process to condition the American people to find this acceptable.
You know, when you really take a look back at some of the things that Joe Biden has said about packing the court, and then you listen to what Tomi Lahren just said, it makes you wonder, how did they get him to follow? Watch this.
President Roosevelt clearly had the right to send to the United States Senate and the United States Congress a proposal to pack the court. It was totally within his right to do that. He violated no law. He was legalistically absolutely correct. But it was a bonehead idea. It was a terrible, terrible mistake to make, and it put in question, for an entire decade, the independence of the most significant body, including the Congress, in my view, the most significant body in this country, the Supreme Court of the United States of America.
Bonehead to let's do a commission and let's let people just do their news conferences and come forth with bills, and maybe we'll wipe away the filibuster and we can pack the courts. Kaylee.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, what stunning turn of events. But this is why Joe Biden is slow walking this. And we saw it on the campaign trail. There's a reason he wouldn't come out and just say, you know, I'm for court packing, I'll appease my progressive base. He knew that just 34% of the nation supported the idea. He knew to get elected, he couldn't be for defunding the police. He couldn't be for health care for illegal immigrants. He could not be for court packing. But that's why, look at what he's done. Look at the model Joe Biden has set. He has slyly and coyly put in place some very progressive policies, making him, which I would argue would be one of the most progressive presidents in history. He's already met with historians saying, I want to be more progressive than FDR. How can I be more significant in history? Well, this commission is just the vehicle to pack the court. It is packed with liberals. Bob Bauer, one of the co-chairs of the commission, has written extensively about the need to change this institution, to change the court. He represents what 2-to-1 of the ratio of this commission is, which is liberal. And Bob Bauer worked in the Obama administration. He has put in place the vehicle to change the court with this commission, but in a way that slow walks it, in a way that doesn't lose and hemorrhage that political support in the midterms.